like, where did the record button go? All right, folks. So we're going to be working on these projects here for the first chapter, and there's kind of a series of them. So it goes in steps, and this can be a little bit of a complicated project, and like especially if you've never encountered this concept before. But what we're about to do is we're going to start this thing that a lot of IT pros do, especially when they're doing things that might cause problems on their computer system otherwise. So for example, if you want to try, let's say you're running Windows 10 on your machine and you're not really sure that you want to run Windows 11, right? You're like, I'm not sure I want to switch. I will tell you just as a sideline, my change from Windows 10 to 11, which I did on most of my machines recently, was probably the smoothest operating system upgrade I've ever done in Windows ever, right? It was the least problem filled. I didn't have to update any drivers or reinstall software. I was very impressed. Previous versions of Windows, there's always something you have to fix, right? Give me just a sec. Now, one way that you can do that is by creating basically what we call a virtual machine on top of your operating system. So you load a piece of software that then gives the capability for your computer to simulate a standalone computer system that then you can load another operating system into and run on top of your current operating system. In essence, what you'll be doing is taking some of your CPU cores, some of the RAM, and allocating it to this, what we call this virtual machine. And we're going to use a special piece of software to do this. And what I'll do is I'll load up the website here. And so if you want to follow along, the software is called Oracle VirtualBox, right? And I'm just going to Google it rather than go to the URL. But the URL is virtualbox.org, and I'll paste that into the chat for you guys. So here it comes. So you guys can all go to that website. If you happen to be working on the school machines here, this software is already preloaded on the school machines. It should be, right? So there's no need to install it. I am noticing that VirtualBox is on version 7 now. I have that software already installed on my machine. I don't know what version it is. It might be version 7. I usually try to keep it up to date, but real frankly, I'm not sure, But I do want you guys to go through this process to download it. So if you land on the home page, just click the big download button. This, as a sideline here, this software is platform agnostic. So what that means is Windows, Mac, Linux, no problem. It'll work on all the platforms. For Linux distributions, it should be pretty rare. Every once in a while, you'll get those students that only run Linux on their computers. You want to be tuned into which distro you're using, and Linux people know what I'm talking about, because there's often various distributions based on the platform it's built on. All right. So for most of you who are running Windows machines, you're going to notice this little tiny link here, and it's kind of small, so I'll zoom in. It says Windows hosts, right? But before you go errantly clicking on stuff, because the pattern of most consumers when you're installing software is like download, next, I agree, install, or you're finished, right? And you're done. You never read the license agreement or what the options are, and then next thing you know, you got a virus or something weird like that. Believe it or not, there are very legit software packages that you download that sometimes have payloads that built into them, because they got to pay the software is not free. They got to pay the bill somehow, and sometimes they piggyback other stuff onto it. So my advice is always read the screens and always choose very carefully what you're downloading. Don't just errantly click on stuff, right? This site is not necessarily the most user-friendly. It has gotten better over the years, but I before I go clicking, I noticed that they're calling it VirtualBox binaries, and I'm like, what the heck is that? What that means, the binary means it's a compiled file that's executable. That's what that refers to. So that means it's an executing program that you would download. For those that are particularly paranoid, so cyber people, those that are going into cybersecurity in particular, you notice these little things down here where they have checksums in SHA-256 and MD5 formats. So those that are really paranoid about the stuff that they're downloading will download these checksums and then compare their downloaded file against the checksum to make sure they're actually downloading the real thing. Because it has been known that hackers can get into sites, hijack the site, make it look just like the real one, and have you download stuff that's filled with junk, maybe has a real thing too, but the checksum doesn't match and it's not real, right? So the reason they have a checksum, the checksum basically checks the file size versus what it's supposed to be and what you actually received to make sure it's valid.
I have 3 questions.
Sure.
This one just to knock it off.
Sure.
So this is my first time ever hearing this. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
What a good
like
thing?
we just learned that checksums are a thing.
You know what? If you're just starting out in IT, this is kind of a deep topic, you know, so it's like, here we are in the first day of a first semester course.
Like a consumer.
Well, as a consumer, most consumers do not concern themselves with this.
So,
but people who are super concerned about things being absolutely secure and not pirated and hacked, they pay really close attention to this. So for example, if I was loading this piece of software on a server here on Gateway that runs one of our major systems, you could bet your life that I would do that. Okay. For us loading on our personal machines, it's not really that big of a deal. I would just go ahead and download the binary. So that's what we're going to do. So what we're going to do, folks, is we're going to click here on the version that matches your platform. So if you're on a Windows machine, Windows. If you're on a Mac, etc. So I'm going to click Windows hosts, and right away it's downloading the binary. It looks like the version is 7.0.6 something or other. And since I already have this installed on my machine, I am going to check my version number by launching the software. So this is kind of a sideline here. Okay. All right, so I'm on version 6, by the way. Okay. Now I should probably upgrade it. But what I will do is I'm not going to do the full install. What I will ask is there somebody either in the Zoom session in class or online that's willing to share their screen with us? I hear the crickets. Are you in the session?
I can.
Oh. Who said that?
But I can share mine.
Yeah. All right, Becky, it sounded like your voice was in the room. So that was a little strange. Okay, Becky, thank you. So Becky's got her her camera turned on, so it's on my second screen, but if you guys are in the Zoom session, you would see her. Becky and I have had classes before together, and I appreciate that you're willing to share. Let me make sure that the share options are enabled. Okay, you should be able to share your screen. So right now in the Zoom session, Becky's gonna take control of the screen. I'm gonna stop sharing, and she's gonna start sharing, and then I'll move your share over to the main screen once it's active. So we'll just be patient here as we're going through. So here comes your screen. Yep. And then I am going to see if I can detach all your faces from the session so that you guys don't get, basically so you guys don't get recorded in the video. And I'm not having success with that. So folks, if you don't want yourself recorded into the video, don't turn your cameras on, just so you know. But right now what we're looking at is Becky's screen, so she's sharing it remotely. And did you download the Windows host file?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm gonna find it.
All right. And go ahead and go to your downloads and open the file.
Actually, I probably should have shared my other screen.
Well, Becky, you can stop the share and reshare if that's helpful.
Okay. I'm assuming yes. All right, here, let me stop and go back in here. And Zoom.
Now, this is kind of a weird way to work, but for those of you that are new to doing Zoom, you do get used to it really quick, and you know it's a really powerful tool. And Zoom's just one of many tools. There's many tools that are comparable, by the way. All right. So now we can see your whole screen. So she went ahead and double clicked on the file that she downloaded. So if you're using Google Chrome that usually pops up at the bottom, but this is in her downloads folder. Yep, thank you, Becky, for showing that. And you just double clicked it to open it. Go ahead and click next. All right. And you know, they're giving you all these different options here. Right now what this screen is showing us, if you look really, really close, all the options are enabled. So we're doing a full install. Yes, sir.
My thing is saying, I need a lot of these apps to make changes to your device, and that's what we're using. Yeah, that's what I can too.
Yeah. So some of you are getting what they call the user control screen. So basically, you're downloading a piece of software from the internet, and they're saying, Windows is saying, are you sure you want to allow to give permission to this app to install on your machine? If you're doing it on your own personal machine, say yes. If you do it on the school computers, you probably won't be able to. So if you're on the school desktop, it's going to disallow you. On your own machines, you do have to trust it to allow it to install.
Yeah, I had to do that. We missed that part.
Yeah, and Becky, you already had that screen, I assume? Okay, thank you. Becky, go ahead and click next. All right. So that gives you a little bit of a warning here. So what the warning is it's telling you that this is going to create some new virtual networking interfaces on your computer system. So when you look in your device manager, you're going to have these new pop-ups. And basically the reason this happens is whatever the virtual environment is, it routes to the internet through your existing stuff, but it creates a virtual device to do it. So let's go ahead and click yes, like you have a choice. Okay, and so we need to read that screen really carefully. And it says, installing the VM virtual bindings, Python core package and the Win32 API bindings. Becky, don't you have Python installed on your machine?
Yes, I have the Anaconda.
Okay. Okay, so if we need to use certain, okay, so it's just telling us if we need to use certain features, we have to install this later. Okay, so just say yes. And then go ahead and click install. All right, so this will take a few moments to install. This is always the fun part, right? Just watching the progress meter go really slow. It's just kind of interesting when you watch people and you see how fast this progress bar goes. Like that was really pretty darn quick. And it shows you it's not really that huge a piece of software when it comes down to it. And then it says, start Oracle VirtualBox after installation. You can go ahead and start it, Becky, if you wish, and just to make sure that it launches correctly. All right, so you see the icon came up in the toolbar. You might want to click on the icon to bring it forward. All right, well, it's got interesting, they have a new look to it, right? So it has a dark theme on it now. And Becky, thank you for sharing your screen. So that's really most of the install process is what Becky just did right now. So Becky, I'm going to take the screen back from you. And I'm going to move Zoom out of the way and back over to my second screen. And then here on my own machine, and this is really kind of goofy to demonstrate, but I'm going to show you VirtualBox in action, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to minimize the stuff in the background here just to get it out of the way. But I've launched VirtualBox. I have a little bit older version. Functionally, you know, it's going to do exactly the same thing. With pieces of software like this is considered open source software. So the source code that created it is available freely on the internet, believe it or not. But this is a piece of software that's very powerful considering it's free. There are professional versions of the software. In the previous class, I forget the guy's name, he mentioned Hyper-V, which is Microsoft's virtualization tool that's built into the professional versions of Windows. Yes, sir.
I said, I think I know who that is.
What was that?
I think it was the guy that was sitting right here.
Yeah. Was it Eric? No, Eric is Eric. I will learn you guys' names. I'm sorry I don't have them all the first day. But if you are working, you know, in most professional environments, so for example, the server rack that I have sitting in the next room here that runs our data servers, we run a piece of software called VMware. And in terms of like professional usage, that's the de facto tool out in the field. VirtualBox is free though, and for doing the kind of stuff that we're doing, which is a little bit more lightweight and for personal computers, I think it's really a better tool, and the free is a great price, right? You can't argue with that. What I'm going to show you, is VirtualBox in action, and this is really kind of weird in the way that I use it. I don't really do a lot of virtualization on my own personal computer systems at home because I have so many computer systems at home. So if I want to be on a Mac, I just fire up the Mac, or if I want to be on a Linux machine, I connect to the Linux machine. But if I'm doing some weird stuff, and this is really kind of strange, you'll notice that inside the VirtualBox environment here, I have already created 2 virtual machines. One exists for the fact that I had an old piece of software when I bought my house, 25 years ago, whatever. I was using a piece of design software to work on the floor plan and like change the walls and the rooms and the windows and all that. And that piece of software was designed to work on Windows 3.1. With a little finagling, I was able to make it work on Windows XP. But then when it got past XP, I could no longer run the software. But here were all the blueprints and plans for my house in this piece of software that only runs on this old operating system. So I created a virtual version of Windows XP that I can still fire up and look at my house plans that otherwise I would never be able to access. Right? Windows XP is horrible though if you do try to run it these days, because it's horrible. Okay. But as a better demonstration here, I have a virtual machine of Windows 3.1, which is probably the first commercially successful version of Windows. And folks, I do realize it's 9:50, but I'm just about done, just so you know. And this is really goofy because you can see what I'm running in the background on it. Right now it's in a hibernated state. So whenever you're running a virtual machine, this is kind of interesting, whenever you're done using it, you don't have to power it down. You can just turn it off and it just takes a snapshot of where it's sitting in memory. You can go right back to it. And so that's what I have going here. So I'm going to hit my start button here. We'll talk about how to configure all this next week. And right now, it's going to fire up my Windows 3.1 environment straight to solitaire, right? So this is really goofy, but I was having this discussion with my son. This is Windows 3.1, probably the first successful version of Windows. I'm not sure what happened to version 1 or 2 or whatever, or Windows 3.0 for that matter, but 3.1 was the first successful one. And what's kind of interesting now, like if you try to play solitaire on Windows these days and you download it from the Microsoft Store, they have like ads and commercials and nag screens and all this goofy stuff. And I was like, remember the old days when you could just play solitaire and not have to pay?
So I gotta get on that ad block. First thing I did when I got my laptop, I put ad blocker on it.
Yeah, well, this is really kind of a goofy example, but if I come in here, so I can click into the environment, and there's my mouse, I'm in the environment, and so if you can like imagine this, here I am running an old version of Windows inside a new version of Windows, and it's really kind of like amazing how far we've come. So when I first got onto Windows, this is what it looked like, folks. And it's really bizarre, but kind of neat because historically I can demonstrate an old version of Windows and do anything in here that I normally do on any computer system that was running it, run software, create documents, save files, whatever I want to do, and not actually have to pollute my core operating system in the process. And any work I do inside of here will stay isolated. That's why we call it a sandbox. And so how this is useful in a modern sense, and this is, the part that's kind of a leap intellectually, especially when you're new to this, is sometimes when you want to test a piece of software and you don't know if it's got a virus on it or if it's corrupted or if it's working correctly, you can load it into a virtual environment and whatever it destroys there is whatever. It's not going to harm your core system. So, all right, folks, that ends the recording and we'll come back to this next week.